All right, everybody hear me? I will do my best not to shout in your ear. It's just very tempting being here in a loud room. I feel like I have to project, but I'll do my best. So if I start to get too loud, just somebody throw something at me or we'll figure something out. This is integrating FileMaker and QuickBooks. I see one has done it. How many else have already tried to integrate or successfully? Good, that's good, excellent. That's awesome. They're just two little companies. Maybe you've heard of them somewhere in your walks, but they are very different. They're big powerhouses in what they do, and sometimes we try and get them to do things they were never really designed to do. And it's trying to get a fish to climb a tree. Maybe you could teach it to do it, but why would you do that? So it's a matter of really getting a strategy that's going to work well. So we'll just start back at the top. I'm Stuart Height, the instructional design specialist with Productive Computing. And I have about 8 of the 16 courses at Productive Computing University, one on certification, and we just released one on API fundamentals. We also have the YouTube channel with a lot of tips and tricks. I am 17 and 18 certified. And we have kind of written the book on connecting FileMaker and QuickBooks. We can't tell you everything in the 23 minutes that we have left. It's actually a 5 to 6 hour course that we have online that you can take, where we start with nothing, a completely blank, nothing FileMaker database, and walk you through step by step all the way to a fully functional integrated solution. So that takes about 5 hours if you know absolutely nothing. We can't do that all here. So my goal is to kind of give you the biggest hurdles that you're going to come across as a developer when you're moving through this integration world. And there are two differences right away. There's a difference between desktop and online. So this is the ABCs and D. The first one is ask the right questions. This hopefully is not new to a lot of developers, but for some, they've never been really trained. How many of you were just kind of thrown into, hey, we need you to learn this and do something? That's a lot of developers on that. So you've never really figured out a strategy, a process that you go through to do this. So the most important thing, if you're going to do an integration between the two, is to ask the right questions. The opposite of that would be assuming that you know what they want. And that is just not the case at all. The answers to the right questions will make everything so much easier. One thing as developers, we get so excited about something because we know a little bit, that as soon as somebody says, hey, do you know anything about QuickBooks? You just want to jump right on them. You're like, oh, well, which version of QuickBooks are you using? Oh, which version of FileMaker are you using? Because did you know that there's different versions of QuickBooks and they have different pricing? And look, this one has this many modules, that is that. You just throw stuff at them. They may not have a clue what you're talking about. And so you want to back way up. There's all these modules that you could connect. They may not have a clue about any of that. Versions of FileMaker, or Clarice, as we may be calling it affectionately now. You want to go all the way back to the very beginning and say, what is the primary goal? What do you want to accomplish? What you have in your mind and what they have in their mind, vastly different. Just in this DevCon alone, and talking with a few people, what they thought they wanted was very different than what they actually needed. So don't push something on them that you never want to create the most extravagant solution to the wrong problem. No one will be happy with that. So start with this blank thing, let them talk in their language, and you may get an answer like this. I want something that works, so I can just type stuff in, and I'm done sooner. Anyone get that? Sometimes that's all they know. And you may have to get a little more specific before you can do that. Have you had this one before? I want a few behind the scenes reports that I can monitor a few employees so I can prove that they are liars and frauds. That is a different set of expectations than the first one. And then you also may have, they want a full accounting software package, so they only enter once, and everything is nicely accurate. That's another option. All of those are different. And I will tell you that my very first QuickBooks integration that I did when I started 17 years ago as an in-house developer, all three of those were on the list because we had about 40 different team members. So I was trying to gather what is it we're trying to accomplish. And all of those were in the same thing. So how do you know which one of these you are going to follow? And here's where you want to step back and think of the strengths of the software. This is accounting. That's the strength. How much versatility, though, do you get in layout management here, in user interface, in field choices? Hardly any. It's like all versatility here, all accounting here, and some people try and make them both. And my recommendation is keep them separate especially until you know what it is you're trying to accomplish. In order to do that, we have to ask a few more questions, but everything should be around that primary goal that we just went over. Figure out what that is. Everything you do revolves around that goal, as well as knowing the players that are involved. Every one of these have different goals that they want. They have different languages that they speak. End users, owners, accountants. So whose goal is most important in all of that? Which one do you pay attention to the most? The one that is signing your check. That's the one you have to make happy. Now sometimes you have to make the end user happy that makes the owner happy because they're signing your check. In that particular example, this is a real life example of the quotes I'm giving you. One of them was the owner's wife, and another end user was their daughter. And it was a family-owned business, which has some ups and downs, if you have ever done that. So sometimes there was a lot of, the wife wanted to do everything on paper, didn't want to use either one of those, actually. And the daughter was really wanting to move forward, and the owner wanted to be really traditional. So it's very hard to just say, we're going to do it this way. You have to listen to what they want and keep them focused on where they want to go. They can get bypassed. We do it too. Don't we get bypassed with all these new features? You know, the while function came out. Now everything we program is using the while function. You got to put that in. Instead of pausing and seeing, is it really what we need? Is it right for this particular solution? So keep those in mind. They know their business. You may not have a clue how their business works, but they don't know your business either. They don't know the possibilities of what you can do. Don't confuse them and give them something they never really wanted to begin with. Then you won't get the continued business. So recognize the language barrier between all of these categories. It can be very, very helpful. You may have to know a lot of them, but you won't need to know as much as you think you do, especially when it comes to QuickBooks. How many are accountants here? Okay, we have a couple. But see how the difference of terminology could be for, if I gear this entire presentation in accountant speech, others may be lost. So keep the strengths and the weaknesses in mind as you're going through. Here's an example about terminology. Here's some questions that you could ask. Do you currently use items? How often are you adding, modifying? Would you expect FM to automatically be updated and so forth? There's a problem with this example though. Depending on who you're talking to, they may have no idea what you're asking. You may know what you're saying. An accountant may know one, end user may know another, QuickBooks user may know. So you have to be very careful how you're wording your questions, or you're going to waste a lot of time on the wrong solution. So another way of keeping it open-ended is, what is your current goal? How do you accomplish that goal currently, and how do you want to accomplish that goal in the future? Step out of the technical jargon. Just get them talking about what they want to do. And you will find out how complex or how simple your solution may need to be. You don't want to waste a ton of time on stuff. Now, there are a few technical questions that we kind of assume as developers that are different between QuickBooks and FileMaker, so I want to make sure I point a couple of those out. One is the custom fields in QuickBooks. Those are a little more advanced. They're doable, you can do them, but it's not quite as just simple, we're just going to put this field over here. There's a few extra little things. So if they are using those in their QuickBooks solution, just know it's going to add time. And you do want to listen when you're asking that previous question. You want to kind of find out, are we talking about a major QuickBooks user that's trying to transfer everything over to FileMaker? Are we talking to a FileMaker person who's trying to put everything in QuickBooks? Or are we talking to a company that's split down the middle and they just want all their stuff to match? Those are three very different scenarios. And if all you know is one, it won't work for all of them. So know that end goal and how, so that they can say, well, we want to enter it in FileMaker, but our accountant really has to have it in this format. That's a different scenario than trying to convert a whole solution over into something else. So listen for those cues of the path to get there, and don't just assume that FileMaker and QuickBooks are the only ones that are involved. They may think that it is, but there could be these other smaller things. It could be, in the one that I was doing, we had FileMaker 4.1, we had FileMaker 4.5, or 5.5, sorry. We had Excel, we had all these different things that all had to talk to each other. But they may think in their mind, I just want QuickBooks and FileMaker. They don't recognize the difference between them. So make sure you don't speak too soon. Another very interesting differentiation is customers and vendors. In FileMaker, we have a contacts database, right? And we just say, oh, yeah, it's customer or vendor, you just add a field. Not so in QuickBooks. They're different, two totally different tables, as a matter of fact. But you cannot use this, you can't have a John Smith here and a John Smith here. The way they work their primary keys is just different. Their relational database format, the way they bridge things together, is different than what you would think. You might think, why are they doing it this way? You're not going to change them. You can send them a note if you want and say, hey, will you change your format? They're not going to do that. So you have to adapt and figure out, how can I make this work over here? And when you understand that mapping, it's a lot easier, but some of these you may not spot right away. So if you're aware of them, then it can be very helpful, save you a lot of time down the road. Another one is multiple payments on invoices, or partial payments, or recurring payments. QuickBooks does a lot of things that FileMaker, normal, basic, fundamental invoicing programs, you don't allot for. And so don't assume that theirs is the same way that you do it. You have to get specifics on those. And tracking inventory. Some companies love it, some companies don't. What is their strategy? So don't impose one. Ask an open-ended question and just let them talk. Oh, we hate inventory. We don't have anything for inventory. Oh, I really wish we could, but we've never had a system. You learn those points so you don't waste time of programming or even discussing a solution. And how about taxes? Not something everybody wants to talk about, unless you're one of the two accountants here. Maybe they enjoy that. But it is a part of business. Now, how long do you think it would take to create a FileMaker solution from scratch that does everything that QuickBooks does in a way that an accountant would like it to be done? Could it be done? Does FileMaker have all those things? Yes, it could. But if QuickBooks already has everything in place and the accountants have the screens, they know their flow, how they do it, why not just send the data where it needs to go and let them stay in QuickBooks, in their home? They like their home. Don't force them out of their home. Keep the data entry in FileMaker where they like it to be, and let the accountants over here. So don't force one situation over the other. Now, after you've got some of the basic fundamental things, now you can start to look at, okay, which version are you using? If you're even staying with QuickBooks, because maybe they're saying, I just want to dump everything in QuickBooks over to FileMaker. That's a different path. That's a different scenario. Doesn't matter what version it is at that point, you're just dumping data. Each of these versions has different levels, different modules that may be a part. So if you decide to build the most wowie-zowie integrated solution that does every single thing and they only need 2 of those over there, it may be overkill. So knowing some of those differences can be helpful. This currently with our FM Books plugin works with all of those modules. So as you're talking with your client or with yourself, if you talk to yourself about your solution, you can look at these modules on the QuickBooks side and say, I really only need this one, this one, and this one. You only need to integrate a couple of them. Maybe whether it's for tax purposes, reporting purposes. So don't feel overwhelmed thinking I have to integrate every single one. You don't. You can if you want. The plugin integrates beautifully with all of them, but don't think that you have to. And then of course the version of FileMaker may make a difference if they want to do everything through WebDirect or on a server. There's just questions that you want to go through your mind before you meet the client for the first time. My recommendation, in case I forget it towards the end, is that you do a QuickBooks integration before you have to do a QuickBooks integration. Practice it once so you get a feel for it. You know how the plugin works, how the calls are going to work, the scripting, the fields, the modules, the relationships, so that you don't have surprises later and thinking, oh yeah, I can do that in 5 hours, when you know it's going to take a little bit longer. So there's ways that it doesn't have to be expensive to practice your first time. So now we're at B, we got a little bit of time. The next one is be aware of your numerous options. So we're asking questions about their goal. Once you know their goal, now we want to look at the options so that you're not trying to put a round peg in a square hole, that you're really making something that the client is super happy about. That should be your main goal. So you want to be an expert of the possibilities, and this is going to come down to data flow and interface. And even just within productive computing, we have several things that we've displayed in some of our training, some of our YouTube, and some of our products. We have the QuickBooks itself has its own, we'll just show that on the screen. This is a QuickBooks screen. QuickBooks Online, I believe, is the one that we're using. How much adaptation do you think you can do to that? If you wanted to add a field or a button, do you think you could do that in QuickBooks? It is not very easy, or impossible. Just knowing, anyone know where you would go to add an invoice? Just point to which part of the screen you would go to add an invoice, just by looking at this. Any guesses? Actually, right up at the top, new transaction, is way over there. You would think it'd be, well, sales maybe, or over here. This, to me, was extremely foreign. It makes no sense because of growing up in FileMaker and being to do things the way I want. It's hard for me to navigate this. But accountants that live here all day long, very simple, piece of cake, makes sense. That's the way they train their brain. So this is one interface set. We also have, oh, this is a great question. Sometimes they don't want to give up what they have. They like what they have. Who loves change? You like the change of the name, the change of all kinds of things change. But when they look at this, they say, I want everything just like that. But if you could ask, if you could change just one thing, what would it be? Then you're not putting them on the defensive. You're not trying to badmouth something. They may say, oh, I just wish I could have this one field. Great. Now you're in a dialogue of solution goal-oriented instead of that stinks, you got to use this. You want to stick with something that they want. There's FileMaker templates for contact tables, right? How many of you use those frequently for your clients? That's what I thought. Nobody. And yet you have that as an option. Maybe there's someone that just really loves that style. We have Quicksilver, which is I'll demonstrate that in a little bit. It's the sample database that I made when we made the QuickBooks online training course in 5 hours. So you've got that sample file in the training course of a way that it could be done. We have the FM Books connector. There's a whole demo file you can download from the website, and I'll show a sample of that as well. Completely different style of interface. Then you have the Core CRM Pro, which is our brand new CRM that is already integrated with QuickBooks, just with checking a box. Different interface than all of those other ones. But if you know the options, and if you can pull them up for your client and say, do you like this, this, or this? And let them talk about it, now they're excited instead of thinking I have to follow whatever you say. The same thing is going to happen with data flow. What data really needs to be merged? You might think all of it. I haven't seen a case yet where it's all of it. There's little pieces, and you keep asking them, which one? If you didn't need something, what would it be? If you could only have one, what would it be? Ask questions like that, and you may find out it's only a couple fields, or it's only one of the tables. And one, just in talking this week at DevCon, they thought they were going to have to convert everything that they had over to QuickBooks for the accounting. So no one in FileMaker has to know that QuickBooks is even a part of it. All of your end users, your sales, your marketing, all of them that don't want to know anything about accounting, no offense to the accountants, they don't have to even know it's there. It's all done behind the scenes when you know which fields are there. So the hardest part is figuring out which way is the data flowing. The easiest part really is getting them connected. I'm not saying that that's completely simple, it takes some work, but this is the hard part. So is all of the primary data in FileMaker and QuickBooks is just a backup, just something you send to the accountant once a quarter? Or is everything done in QuickBooks and you're just sending a behind the scenes report data over to FileMaker so the owner can pull up on FileMaker Go and check on the status of his cheating salespeople? You get to decide, but you ask them to decide. They want to know where that data houses. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes they want both to be accurate at all times. And that could be in real time, it could be daily, could be weekly. Can you still hear me? Okay, good. Could be monthly, could be quarterly. Don't make a system that is unnecessary. Getting it real time accurate is doable. It can be done. We show you how to do that in the course. But if it's unnecessary, then just send the stuff once a month. The solution I was talking with earlier today, they just needed it weekly. They wanted Sunday night, all sales figures sent to QuickBooks. Great. Can be done with a script on server overnight. Nobody even knows. And everyone's happy. And she was just ecstatic. So be mindful that you have those options, but don't force something in a direction that doesn't need to go. C, with our last few minutes here, is get connected to abundant resources. Do not create the wheel. It's completely unnecessary. Could you use a data API and connect yourself and read through all the manuals to do it? Yeah, you could. But you could also just use a plugin that does almost all of it for you, that just puts new scripts in. You get like 15 new scripts that just says, copy this over here. Okay, easier to do. You have the PCU courses that walk you through step by step instead of you figuring out the pitfalls of where those are. Get connected to save you time instead of, I know it took me months to try and figure QuickBooks out the first time when I was doing my first integration. If I would have had the 5-hour course to do, well, I'd be up and running in 5 hours. Huge amounts of time savings for myself and my client. And then lastly would be the pre-made solutions like the core, CRM Pro, which I'm just gonna show you that. If you haven't seen that, I just have to show you because it's really kind of cool. This is the core CRM, and if you want QuickBooks, you just come over here and you say, I want to integrate with QuickBooks. Okay. You install it, you test the connection, and now you have these QuickBooks synchronization things here, and on sales, you have these show up where if you were in preferences, you say, no, I don't want QuickBooks integration. Those aren't even there. So having something pre-made like that you then can be flexible and just tweak a little bit can save you a lot of time too. But you know what you're best at, and your clients know what they are best at. So let your clients do what they do best. Let accountants do what they do best. Let FileMaker developers do what they do best. The users do what they do best. Everyone can be happy. The actual integration is a whole lot simpler using a plugin, that I'm sure. And it really comes down to getting what do you need? What does your client want? Once you have that, it's really pretty simple. So we have more info at our booth. We're right over here in all the blue shirts. Robin is here, I'm here if you have other questions. Any questions in our last remaining minute? I don't even know if I'll be able to hear you because it's kind of loud in here if you have headphones on. Come see us at the booth, check out the courses and the plugin. You get a free demo of the download of the plugin to play around with, test it out. And the last little tip I'll give you on QuickBooks, you can get a free sandbox account for it as a developer. So you download the demo from Productive Computing, you get a free account with QuickBooks Sandbox, test out your connection, make your connection. Doesn't cost you anything to try it out. And then you have some experience so that somewhere along the line, if someone says, hey, do you know anything about integrating with QuickBooks? Instead of saying, yeah, I'll figure that out, you can say, yeah, I've done one of those. Which one do you think the client would be more excited to approach? So take a few hours to do that and you'll be wowed in the process. So thanks for attending. Enjoy DevCon. We'll see you at the booth. Thanks.